Well, good morning. We're so glad you're with us this morning, especially if you're new. And also, for those of you who are watching online, we want to pay a special welcome to you. As we get started this morning, let me ask you a question. When was the last time you were just a little scared? I don't mean like totally fearful. I mean just a little scared of something or someone. When is the last time that happened? For me, the last time that happened where I got just a little scared was actually on this stage a number of years ago. It's probably about 8 years ago. Brian had gone on vacation, and it was my turn to get up here and speak. And for those of you who have had to do public speaking, you know the nerves you get right before you go onto a stage or somewhere to speak. And I get nervous every time I have to come out here. You may look at me and be like, oh, you seem like such a natural. It seems so easy for you. No, I get nervous every single time. But this time, it was a little bit more than nerves. Because I come out and I start with the introduction and I get into it and tell a story or something, and then it's time for me to read from the Bible, and we do that every week here. And so I go back, and if you've been around for a while, you know me, I speak from a stool and a table, and so I come back here to the table to read from the Bible, and as I'm sitting down to read, I hear a few people laughing in the front row. Like, yeah, you people right here, you were like laughing at me. And I'm trying to figure out, why are they laughing? So I'm still talking, still teaching and talking about the Bible. And in the back of my mind, I'm asking, what, did I drop something? I didn't crack a joke. I didn't make any, but why are they laughing at me? And I cannot figure this out. But then as I look down at the Bible to read, I see it. Let me ask you a question. What do you think happens to a finely pressed pair of khakis and you sit down and your zipper's down? That's right, my fly was open, and not just open, it was like a flower, it's springtime open. The barn door was open, the butterfly had spread its wings, and everyone could see my tighty-whities. And I'm standing there, and it doesn't stop. The mind racing doesn't stop when you feel a little scared. As a matter of fact, it gets worse. Because at this point, I'm sitting here thinking, what do I do? And so, one option is you zip right up in front of everybody. I could do that. How many of you would have just zipped up in front of everybody? I didn't do that, but another option is you turn around and you zip up, and you just crack a joke or something. Another option is you leave. How many of you would have just completely left the stage at that point? Yeah. I didn't do any of those things. I preached the rest of that sermon standing up so that my fly would not be open. That's what I did. Matter of fact, when I got here this morning, my wife said, "Is your fly zipped?" Every Sunday she asks me before I come out. That was a moment where I was a little scared. But being just a little scared is different than flat out fear, isn't it? Like real fear. There's a difference between those two things. I remember the last time I was really, really consumed by fear. I'm sitting on the couch with my wife, Shelley, and we're watching some sort of sitcom on TV or something. I just remember us laughing hysterically. Laughter subsides, and then I start feeling pain right in the middle of my chest. Significant chest pain. And I'm thinking, oh, it's got to be indigestion, maybe it's something I ate, not a big deal, and I'm ignoring it, just waiting for it to go away. And it doesn't go away. The longer I wait, the worse it gets. And then that pain begins to travel from my chest down my left arm. How many of you knew exactly what I was thinking in this moment? I'm thinking, heart attack? Are you kidding me? I'm way too young to be having a heart attack. This just can't be happening. It's probably not, this is just going to go away. So I wait longer, and it doesn't go away. It intensifies, and I'm like curling up on the couch at this point. I'm in so much pain. I grab my wife's hand. I put it on my chest. I'm like, honey, feel this. And she says, oh my goodness, your heart is racing, and my heart was cruising. She says, we got to get you to the hospital right away. Right away. We call a friend comes over to watch the kids because it's like 11 o'clock, and we buzz down to the hospital. We bust into the ER, and they're like, heart, all right, let's get you back here. They bring me back, and they lay me out on this table. And as I'm laying there, they start hooking up all of these stickers with wires coming out of them, and I'm hooked up to a monitor. They stick an IV in my arm. The doctor comes over to my bedside. He says, look, you're going to be okay. It's not a heart attack. Whew. Okay, it's not a heart attack, but then if it's not a heart attack, what's wrong? And he says, you're tachycardic, and your heart is beating with an irregular rhythm. So yeah, it's cruising, and we have got to slow your heart down. And so, he says, we're going to administer a medication. He sticks the medication to the IV. He said, we're going to give this a little bit of time. It should slow everything down. I wait for 2 hours. Nothing changes. My heart is still cruising at this crazy pace. He comes by, yeah, it looks like your heart still thinks you're running a marathon. Let's try something else. He gives me a different medication. We wait 2 hours. Nothing. Still nothing. 2 more hours, third medication, nothing. I've been in this hospital all night, laying in this ER on the bed. None of the medications have worked. And he comes over to me and he says, yeah, we can't let your heart continue to do this. We've got to stop this. So we're going to have to consider something else. We're going to consider cardioversion. And I'm thinking, wait, cardioversion? Does that mean you're going to hit me with the paddles? And he says, yeah. In order to get this to work, your heart, think of it like a computer almost. Sometimes you've got to reboot it, and we're going to reboot your system. We have to stop your heart and restart it to get things working right. And when he says that, we have to stop your heart and restart it. That's the moment where fear began to creep in. That feeling of fear is definitely different than that feeling of just being a little scared. So today we're going to wrap up this 3-week series that we've been calling Summer Classics. And we've been looking to film as an inspiration, and because our media is really just a reflection of us and our culture. And we want to see how our culture introduces and deals with these topics, and how these characters deal with these same issues that we deal with in everyday life. But instead of just looking at what our culture says, we want to see what God's wisdom says as we examine how to manage these issues in our life. One of our cultural greats in the literary world is Mark Twain. He says this about fear, which is what we're looking at today, and what Rocky was dealing with. This is this issue of fear, because fear can sometimes paralyze us. It really can. Fear can cause us to stop in our tracks, and Adrian told him, Rocky, you've got to face it. You've got to deal with it. You're the one who has to live with it. Mark Twain said this, courage is what is the resistance to fear. Mastery of fear, not absence of fear. And sometimes we get that mixed up. We think that in order to move forward with courage, I've got to not fear fear at all. Like we've got to wipe it away and it can't exist in our life. And instead, no, we need to master it. But how exactly do we do that? Because that's easy to say, certainly easy to read. But how do we go about resisting our fears, mastering our fears? And friends, this is where God's wisdom can help. So what I want you to do is pull out your Bible, turn it to 1 Samuel. We're going to be looking at chapter 17. And for those of you who are new, you may have received a Bible from one of our ushers. You can keep that and take it home with you if you don't have a Bible of your own. Or you can download our church app. Just search for CCV Mobile on the App Store and hit the Bible tab. That'll take you right to our passage for today. So these next few verses in 1 Samuel in chapter 17, bring us to a very familiar story. A story that all of you know the ending of. There's no spoiler alerts here. That story of David and Goliath. And these first few verses kind of set the stage. Saul and the Israelites, starting with verse 2, Saul and the Israelites assembled and camped in the valley of Elah, and they drew up their battle line to meet the Philistines. The Philistines occupied one hill, and the Israelites another, with the valley in between them. So the battle lines have been drawn. These armies take their positions and they dig in. And the Philistine army is on one hill, King Saul and the Israelites on the other. But at this moment, when this valley is in between them, nothing is in the valley. Why? Why are they up in the hill? Just looking at each other. Why is no one in the valley? Well, that's because the valley is where the battle takes place. The valley is where war is waged. The valley is where victories happen. And we all know the end of this story with David and Goliath. David is going to achieve this amazing victory over Goliath. And you may be here and you've not heard much of the Bible before, but certainly you've heard those two names before. Most of us have. And this is where the battle is going to begin. And that got me thinking as I read through this chapter and preparing for today. And I'd encourage you to do the same this week. Just read through chapter 17 of 1 Samuel and read through this entire story. Because what I noticed this week, and this is what I love about God's Word and going back to it and rereading these familiar stories, every time I notice something different. And this moment was no different. This time when I read through it, I noticed that fear is talked about for everyone else. We're going to see it as we dig into it. We're going to see everyone else deal with fear, but not once, not one single time is it recorded for us that David was fearful of the valley, was fearful of Goliath, not afraid of King Saul. He wasn't afraid. There's no record of David feeling any sort of fear at all in this chapter. Why is that? That's the first thing I think we can learn. If you're taking notes, you want to write this down. You don't have to fear the valleys in life. Victories require valleys. The valley is where your battle is going to take place. And we all have valleys in life. And friends, some of you here this morning, you're dealing with a valley of your own. And some sort of opposition in the middle of that valley, your own personal Goliath. And for you, maybe it's a conversation that you know that you're supposed to have and you've been avoiding it for a long time. Maybe it's a confrontation that you know that needs to take place. And you're afraid of what the results of that might be. Maybe for you, you're sitting here and you're wondering this morning, I don't know if I have what it takes to move forward into that valley. Maybe you're fearful of failure as you stare down your valley. Afraid of the unknown. Because maybe you've been waiting for some sort of result from someone else, a decision that someone else that you know has to make, and you're just waiting for them to make that decision, and you don't know what they're going to decide, and so you don't know exactly what your future has in store for you. And you know how we typically respond? You know what our go-to response is to those fears? To put it off. Yeah. We want to put it off as long as we can. We don't want to stare it down. We want to avoid those things like the plague. We want to get as far away from them as possible. A couple years ago, the Washington Post did a survey of things that Americans fear the most, because there are things we all want to run away from in life. We all want to avoid like the plague. And this list was long. I couldn't believe how long this list. I'm just going to give you a few of them today. I want to see how in tune you are with the rest of America. Let's put the first two up on the screen. What do you think Americans feared most? Zombies or clowns? How many of you say zombies? How many of you say clowns? Oh, most of you said clowns. Guess what it is? Zombies! Americans feared zombies more. Has to be because of The Walking Dead, right? How about the next one? Let's put the next two up. What do you think Americans feared more? Drowning or needles? Drowning or needles? What do you think it is? How many of you say drowning? How many of you say needles? Oh, survey says drowning. Drowning won out on that one. Last one. Let's see how you do with this last one. Let's put the next one up. Public speaking or fear of heights? How many of you say fear of heights? How many of you say public speaking? Public speaking. It was a close one with this one. Public speaking won out. Americans feared public speaking more than anything else on the list. And notice, I want you to notice something. All of these things that we feared are things that we see. Yeah. Things that we see. Because our next question should be, well, how did David walk into that valley able to resist and master his fear? How was he able to walk into the valley? And in order to do it, he had to deal with what he saw. David had to deal with what he saw in that valley. See, when we are dealing with what we see ahead, whatever our fears are, whatever our challenges are, we often let what we see determine how we believe, how we're going to motivate ourselves to move forward on the inside. We deal with what's in our valley ahead based upon what we see, and we allow what we see to determine what we believe. I mean, how many times have you heard someone say, I got to see it to believe it? We're all that way. I got to see it to believe it. We let what we see determine what we believe. And that happened in David's situation over and over again. We're going to see how the people, as this whole story unfolds, deal with what we see. Look at what Samuel records for us as to how the Israelite soldiers dealt with what they saw. Verse 24, whenever the Israelites saw the man, they all fled from him in great fear. They saw Goliath, and they ran. And Goliath was an intimidating guy. He was a huge, this massive giant of a man. Steps out onto the battlefield. He wasn't just intimidating to look at, he was also intimidating to listen to. As he walked onto that battlefield, intimidating the soldiers of the opposing force, the Israelite army, day after day, multiple times per day, for weeks. And when they saw him, they ran in fear. This is the next thing we can learn from David. David didn't let what he saw cause him to fear. Don't let what you see seal your fate. That's exactly what happened to the soldiers. They let what they saw automatically seal their fate. They let what they saw determine what they believed about themselves and about God. And friends, we can't let what we see in our valleys ahead seal our fate. Verse 25. The Israelites continue. They say, do you see how this man just keeps coming out to defy Israel? The king is going to give great wealth to the man who kills him, and he'll give him his daughter in marriage and exempt his family from taxes in Israel. How cool would it be to get a tax exemption for facing our fears? Would that not be awesome? But here's the thing though. No reward really helps us face our fears. Doesn't matter how great we think it is. Our fears are still there. David is the only one in this whole situation who sees the truth. And he chooses not to let what he sees seal his own personal fate. For him, Goliath is just another guy. Look at how David responds as he hears these soldiers talking about the reward. He walks over and David asks the men that are standing near him. He says, what will be done for this man who kills this Philistine and removes this disgrace from Israel? You can hear David's angry. He's frustrated. He's like, look, this is just another guy. It's just another Philistine out in the middle of that battlefield. And it's a disgrace. He's walking out here day after day, insulting us and our God and our king, and you guys are just letting this happen. David's frustrated. Why such a contrast between the soldiers and David? The soldiers let what they see seal their fate. David, no, he doesn't let that happen. David sees just another Philistine. Just another obstacle that he can knock over. Why such a contrast? It might be because of their leader. It might be because of the king. That's what we're going to see next, is the way that King Saul responds to this opposition in the valley. How does King Saul deal with what he sees? And that's what we're going to see next as David approaches the king. David says to Saul, look, king, let no one lose heart on the account of this Philistine. Your servant, I'll go fight him. No one has to lose heart. He's just another man out there, just another Philistine. No one has to live in fear. I'll go fight him. Can you imagine being David at this moment? wondering, why is it that no one else sees what I see? Why is it everyone else letting what they see consume them in fear? And those of you who are leaders in this room, take note of what Saul's about to say and how he responds. Because you as a leader, if you're a leader in your family, listen up. If you're a leader in your circle of friends or at your place of work, how you respond as a leader to what valleys you have to enter and Goliaths you have to face impacts those around you. And they start responding with the same exact way you do. Notice what Saul says. Saul replies, "You're not able to go out against this Philistine and fight. David, how are you going to do it? You're just a young man. This Goliath, he's been a warrior since his youth." You see how Saul is responding based upon only what he sees. The exact same way that the soldiers responded in his army. Saul sees nothing but the opposition. But here's the thing. God sees more than what's in the valley ahead. God sees more than what you may think of yourself. God sees the condition of the heart. He sees beyond all appearances. See, before any of this happened, I can show you this, because before any of this happened, this is before the armies are on the hills and they're facing the Philistines, before Goliath's on the battlefield. Samuel is a prophet of God, and he's advising King Saul. And God is prompting Samuel to anoint the future king of Israel. And in those promptings, he leads Samuel to the house of Jesse, which happens to be David's dad. So Jesse is about to line up his sons in front of Samuel to see if any of them might be anointed. And he sends David, who's the youngest and the smallest of the bunch, out into the fields to tend to the sheep, to care for the animals. He lines up his boys, and when Samuel approaches, he was impressed. He sees Jesse's boys, and he says, surely, God's anointed, the future king, is among these young men. As he's thinking that, God speaks right to Samuel. And he says this, "Samuel, do not consider his appearance or his height. I've already rejected him. The Lord does not look at the things that people look at. People look at the outward appearance. But the Lord looks at the heart." See, God wanted someone with the right heart to lead Israel into their future and to walk into that valley and face Goliath. You may not be able to control your physical circumstances and what's in the valley ahead of you, but what you can control, what I can control, is the condition of our heart before we walk into that valley. And if you know David's life story, friends, you know that he made a lot of mistakes. You know that he hurt himself. He hurt a lot of people and families around him. Yet every single time David drifted away, he knew that he had to get his heart back in the right place with God. That's the same thing for you and I. As we have to walk into the valleys ahead of us, as we have to face our greatest fears, and that's the third thing I want you to write down, is ask God to help you develop a pure heart. David knew how important this was, and that's why the Psalms record David's true feelings, what was going on in his mind and his heart. And in Psalm 51, he wrote this. He wrote, "Create in me a pure heart, O God, and renew a steadfast spirit in me." He knew that having this connection to his Creator was going to help him move forward, not just restore himself, but restore the people around him, the lives around him, and eventually the entire nation of Israel. And friends, God is with you, ready to help you restore your heart, so that whatever valley lies ahead, whatever Goliath you need to face, you can face it with confidence because God is right by your side. Remember when I was telling you about laying in that ER? I'm sprawled out on this table. When I started to feel the fear creep in. Because it was more than just me. I had faced other situations where my life was at risk, and none of them were like this one, because now I had a wife and kids to think about. And the doctor is ready to hit me with those paddles, and he takes my wife by the arm, and he says, "Ma'am, you're not going to want to see any of this, so let's head outside into the waiting area. I'll take you out there." And she says, "Oh, no. Hang on 1 second. You are going to stop and then restart my husband's heart. I'm not going anywhere. I'm staying right here by his side." So she stood there by my bedside. The doctor says, "Well, we can give you 2 medications now, Frank. We can give you one that's going to put you out for like the next 3 or 4 hours, and you're going to have to intubate you to help you make sure you breathe and everything else, and you're going to be out for a while, and it's a long recovery time. Option 2, we're just going to give you something that's going to be real quick. This is going to be real fast. It'll only put you out for a few minutes." I'm like, "Well, wait a minute. Just a few minutes. So I'm going to be able to go home faster?" "Oh, yeah. It'll be fast. And I'm not going to feel anything. I'm not going to remember anything." No, Frank, you're not going to feel anything. You're not going to remember anything. You're going to be fine." I'm like, "All right, well, why wouldn't anyone take option 2? So they administer the medication, the IV, and he comes over, he puts it in, and asks me, "All right, count down from 10. So I make it to about 5, and I'm out. And then, bam, I wake up, and I felt that doctor was a liar. I felt everything I felt. My back arches up on the table. Every muscle in my body contracts as tightly as it possibly could. And then finally it just subsided. And I was okay, but I was so sore. Did you even know your toes can get sore? Toes can get sore. It's true. And I look over, and my wife is sitting right next to me. Tears coming down her face, and she embraces me. You know what that reminded me of when she never left my side? God, honest truth. I was reminded that God also never leaves our side. He's there with us no matter what valley or fear that you may face in front of you. God is with you through all of it. Friends, we don't have to fear the valley because victories require valleys. Let's pray. God, I'm so grateful for this reminder that you've given us through the life of David. Thank you so much for his example. And God, I pray that all of us in this room, as we have valleys in front of us, I pray, God, that you work in us and through us, help work in us and help create in us a pure heart, that as we look ahead, God, we make decisions based upon the right motives, not the fears that consume us as we look at our valleys that we face. But God, help us look to you so that no matter what lies ahead, we know that you are by our side. Amen.